Zero sugar. That's what I love about it. You'd think they'd fucking sponsor me after all the press that I gave them. Yeah, some people say it's not the best for you, not the healthiest. I get it. Coffee, energy drinks, diet soda, but I understand. I try to keep it minimal. Salud, Chendan, cheers. Welcome back to Chaos Corner. Here on Guardian of Chaos, the YouTube channel. It's me. It's me. It's the GOC. One man, unique, unedited, unscripted, raw dog for you, the fans. Another special edition of story time here on the show. Because this isn't a fucking podcast. This is a show. Much love and respect to my moderators. Austin Nance, my brother from another mother, and the OTS tribal queen. We all acknowledge the queen. Let's sit back and relax. A little more toned down version of story time here today. And always remember this, and I say it all the time. We read and review this along together for the very first time here on Chaos Corner. And of course, you guys know my over 50 plus years as a historian, a researcher, a scout, an agent, a producer, a promoter, a booker, a sweeper of floors, a hanger up of flyers, a ticket seller, a ring breaker down and setter upper, if those are even words. That's right. A smark. And I'm going to say it for all of you out there. A mark. That's right. I said it, a mark. And I'm proud to be a mark. Because I stepped in the fucking ring. Took the fucking bumps. And I apologize for the fucking cussing. Which is much more than you could say out there in this world, this podcast world. For all you successful podcasters and all these people with thousands of followers making hundreds and thousands of dollars. Congratulations, man. I love to see people do well. I'm one of those that want to support, and you guys know that I all support you, the ones that are following me, and especially channels that I moderate for, which are many. Huge shows, the number one shows, the best podcasters in this fucking IWC. JD from Off the Script with the Salamonster and the Chi-Town Smark. Don, Tony, and Kevin Castle, DT and KC. Those are the tops. Those are the ones. You could throw in Jim Cornette and Brian Last. You could throw in Dirty Dutch Mantel. You could throw in the PWW, the Pro Wrestling Wire. You could throw in the Wrestling Council with Hollywood and Comic Book Bob. And here's Johnny. I'm all over the place. You guys know that. So again, let me not get off track here. We'll be here probably for a good half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. So sit back and relax. Grab a beverage like I just did. And again, I'm going to say that to say this because I tell it like it is. Thank you for being here. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Subscribe. I rate that like button. Share this out. Navigate the playlists. And enjoy the show. The great TV expansion of 1984. The landscape of professional wrestling changed in 1983. Whether the modifications were good for business as a whole remained open to debate. And the answer you received really depended on who you asked. The World Wrestling Federation logo was shining bright in St. Louis and Detroit. Two old-time NWA strongholds. How about that? And Vince McMahon Jr. was organizing a series of maneuvers that would stun critics and enthusiasts alike. Just before the year ended, McMahon made an appearance on the WWF's Victory Corner. Kind of like Chaos Corner. a brief TV interview segment used to promote the organization's periodical, Victory magazine. After acknowledging the massive changes that had already taken place, McMahon made a stunning prediction to host Robert DeBoard. I see 1984 as being perhaps the most turbulent year in professional wrestling. He added that there might be a virtual flood of wrestling talent into the World Wrestling Federation. Wow. And the likes of which we've never seen before. Any type of mass migration of top talent to the WWF was going to create turbulence to the highest order, as Hulk Hogan's jump from the AWA did. Hogan was Vern Gagne's cash cow, and man, he took great credit for building up. That's for sure. Hogan, I created and molded, Gagne told the Minneapolis City Business in 1986. A great year. He's a guitar player. You know what his athletic background is. You know what it is? Little League. No one could dispute that Gagne had given Hogan room to mature as a grappler and fan favorite. During Hogan's first run in the WWF, he showed glimpses of greatness, but was limited as a heel before closing out his tenure unceremoniously in April of 1981. Another great year. He joined the AWA several months later and saw his career take off in feuds with world champion Nick Bockwinkel, Jesse the Body Ventura, and Jerry Crusher Blackwell. In addition, he enhanced his abilities and confidence with a string of tours for New Japan Pro Wrestling. Konnichiwa, bitches. Arigato from the Chaos-san. Hogan became one of Japan's top gaijins. Foreigners, for those who might not know the culture. And he worked high-profile matches with Bob Backlund, Andre the Giant, Dusty Rhodes, and New Japan founder Antonio Inoki. In June of 1983, he defeated Inoki by knockout to win the first ever IWGP Championship, and 5 months later, he teamed with Inoki to triumph in the annual MSG Tag League tournaments. How about that? Reportedly, it was around this same time in Japan that Hogan was approached by Vince McMahon Sr. about defecting to the WWF. Hogan was dismayed by his recent problems with Gagne. Specifically over money relating to his New Japan deal and regarding the sale of merchandise. Gagne's failure to push him over the top to the world title was another slight. The WWF offer came at the right time. His commitment to the AWA ended in mid-November 1983. At that time, I believe I'm 21 years old. Wow. Like 40 years ago? Holy cramoly. And he was free to accept McMahon's proposal to return. On December 27th, 1983, before a sold-out audience at the Chase Park Hotel in St. Louis. Remember the Chase in St. Louis? Very famous venue. Unbelievable. It's where a lot of people got their start. And if you ended up at the Chase in St. Louis, chances are pretty good you were going to be a world champion somewhere. Facts and things that you learn here on Chaos Corner. The incredible Hulk Hogan emerged from the dressing room in his trademark yellow outfit to survivors, the Eye of the Tiger. Din, 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 din. Din, din, din. The Eye of the Tiger. What? Too soon? Too much? No? Too loud? The Eye of the Tiger. The theme from Rocky III, a fantastic movie. As a matter of fact, Rocky 1, 2, and 3 were off the charts. Nothing like the original, Rocky 1, but Rocky 1, 2, and 3, to me, after that, it all went downhill. Just my opinion, man. I'm just telling you. I give you my viewpoints and opinions and thoughts and reactions. And you know it's coming from a credible place. I'm not always right, but I'm very rarely wrong. You guys get that, right? As the crowd cheered, he stepped through the ropes and locked up with preliminary wrestler Bill Dixon. The match lasted only 3 minutes and 2 seconds, but Hogan displayed his strength and charisma and briefly flashed a working knowledge of ring science. I mean, who knew? Put over by the commentators and adored by the audience, Hogan was right in his groove, landing his leg drop and scoring a pin in quick time. After the bout, Hogan spoke with Mean Gene Okerlund, who had also defected to the WWF from the AWA, and hyped up a future live event in St. Louis. Before the interview was over, though, Hogan said he wanted a future shot at the world champion, who by that point was the Iron Sheik. That's who started it, not that girl in fucking Tennessee. Although there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, I want to keep it PG. Here, my family watches. I get it. I understand. Hogan was ushered into a prominent role on WWF TV in January of 1984. He teamed with Bob Backlund to defeat Tiger Chung Lee and Mr. Fuji on an episode of Championship Wrestling, and it was clear he was as over in McMahon's promotion as he had been in the AWA. Backlund was in line for a rematch with the Sheik at Madison Square Garden on January 23rd, but was forced to pull out because of injury. Hogan was given the match in his place, and after 5 minutes and 40 seconds of grappling, if you can call it that, the Hulkster pinned his foe and captured the WWF belt for the first time. The throngs of over 22,000 fans at the Garden went nuts. They were beside themselves. There was chaos, pun intended. And it really felt like it was the dawn of a new era. And that's the truth, because it was. Go back and research it. Think of the time frame. Right after this became Rock and Wrestling Connection, MTV, War to Settle the Score, Brawl to Settle All, the original WrestleMania, which led into the unbelievable event of WrestleMania 3, Saturday night's main event, so on and so forth. And of course, the cartoon era, which I was not a huge fan of. I was balls deep in the NWA at that time. I'm just saying, world class too. Gagne missed the boat. That's an understatement. Hurt by Hogan's defection, he called the Iron Sheik, whom he'd helped train back in the early 70s, and asked him to punish Hogan in their Garden bout as a measure of revenge. According to Hogan's 2009 autobiography, but the Sheik passed on that idea. The loss of Okerlund was painful to Gagne as well. He had been the voice of the AWA's All-Star Wrestling program. I was a fan. And interviewed stars prior to big shows. Gagne later told a reporter that he had offered to match Okerlund's WWF salary to keep him in the AWA. And the latter agreed. The next day, he was announcing for the WWF. Gagne added, "He's an ass." Gagne didn't run things the right way back then. You had your chances, Gagne. Rest in peace, man. Okerlund, like Hogan, had seen the writing on the wall. The WWF, he believed, was the better opportunity. The local AWA show here on Channel 9, Okerlund explained to a Minneapolis reporter in 1984, has left-handed matches in a garage in front of 85 people. In contrast, Titan was a first-class operation. Everything's totally professional. It's network quality programming. We have 12 or 15,000 people for the shows that we air on TV alone. Mean Gene couldn't have been more right. The WWF's TV production was light years ahead of the AWA's. Gagne had been running TV tapings for years from the KMSP studios, and his program was arguably one of the most technologically challenged and uninspired wrestling shows of the time. Vince McMahon Jr. took great pride in his TV superiority, and worked overtime to expand the distribution of his product. As it broke down, his plan essentially encompassed 4 tiers of broadcasting: network TV, syndicated TV, basic cable, and pay cable. And we see how that's turned out. Everything's fucking pay-per-view now, or PLE, or you gotta subscribe to a streaming service. They got you by the balls, man. No offense. The cojones, if you will. But going into 1984, his focus was on expansion onto stations in non-WWF territories and another bold move against established rival promoters. My major step was television on a local basis, McMahon told Sports Illustrated in 1991. We already had our network in the Northeast, and we started selling these shows to stations in other fiefdoms. In Chicago, in Los Angeles, the WWF brand of wrestling was something new. We had better athletes, more upscale, and more charisma. While cable programs reached a great number of people across state lines, the local broadcasts honed in on a specific market and could be utilized to promote live events. A lot of people could learn from that nowadays. Are you listening, TK? And with Okerlund on board, he became the primary interviewer to advertise these shows, speaking with wrestlers and managers and customizing the content for each market. It was a critical job, and Okerlund often did several hundred interviews a week. Several hundred interviews a week. The ability to tie things on TV and with local shows and somehow make the wrestlers seem a part of the community is a key. Dave Meltzer, clown, of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, clown, explained in 1990. That was the principal function of Okerlund and localized programming. They wanted to connect to and draw in regional fans. Makes sense. Basil DeVito Jr., the vice president of marketing for Titan Sports, told a reporter in 1991 that the WWF was a hybrid organization, national in scope but local in impact. Very smart. He explained the same TV stars you see on the tube come right in your hometown, right to your hometown. Vanna White doesn't come to Peoria. The NFL doesn't come to Peoria, but Hulk Hogan comes to Peoria in person. And unlike big league stars, the WWF wrestlers are never in an off season. Those guys are performing 350 nights a year. There's no off season in pro wrestling. 350 nights a year. Are you guys listening and paying attention compared to today's athletes, today's sports, today's industry, today's business, today's professional wrestling? They're not even wrestling 50 nights in a year. Maybe. Some of them. Am I right? Put this in perspective in how we work, not only in the independents, and especially me as a pro wrestling manager. I've already told you my statistics and my numbers. Think about the guys on the road, the NWA, World Class, the AWA, the WWF. Over 300 nights a fucking year in that ring taking the bumps. Do you understand the lifestyle and why the athletes were the way they were back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, into the 90s? Hello? McFly, is anybody home? How could you compare that to this? You can't. There is no fucking comparison. Yeah, there's more money now. There's more stars. There's more athletes. They're supposed to be bigger, stronger, faster. Bullshit. Horseshit. They're always injured. They don't wrestle a quarter the way these men and women did. These are just the facts. That's what you learn here. Facts. This isn't bullshit. Listen to me when I say something. I'm going to give it to you straight. The great TV expansion of 1984 began on January 14th, when the WWF's newest program, Superstars of Wrestling, made its debut in Chicago, a long-time AWA and WWA city, on WFLD 32 on Saturday mornings at 8:30. Over the next 2 months, the WWF secured television sports and spots for Superstars in Louisville, WDRB, Nashville, WCAY, Little Rock, KLRT, and New Orleans, WNOL, as McMahon's sales team reached out to many upstart independent stations. They were warmly received by the TVX Broadcast Group, an Eastern North Carolina outfit. and expanded onto a number of venues, cities, towns, and channels. Let that sink in. Let that marinate. Of their stations as well, including Norfolk, WTVZ, Richmond, WRLH, and Memphis, WMKW. On April 7th, 1984, McMahon gained ground in another big market, Dallas. And Superstars began broadcasting on Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. on Channel 21 KTXA. In the span of 4 months, the WWF encroached on the territories of Vern Gagne, Jerry Jarrett, Bill Watts, Jim Crockett, and Jack Atkinson, Fritz von Erich, among the most powerful promoters in the world. This is history right here. It doesn't get any better than this. Stand by. Don't go anywhere. We're only 20 minutes in. Alexa, play Tropical Thunderstorm sounds. So we get in the mood here at Chaos Corner. Although it's a beautiful day out, 80 degrees, not a cloud in the sky, no geo-manipulation engineering going on of the weather for once. Hey, what are you going to say? What'd I say? What would I say? Stand by. Don't go anywhere. Don't go. Hey, I'm talking to you, Austin and Tribal Queen. Don't go anywhere. I need you here. You never know who's going to show up in the chat, in the premiere, live to tape. Should I put it back on this side? Right, left, right? Depending on where you're sitting. My motivation, my passion, my distraction in this fucking insane world, and hopefully I'm doing that for you, the fans. That's my whole purpose, to give back. And looking for support in these towns, the WWF imperiled the stability of the local promoters. McMahon was now in a fight for talent, ratings, and most importantly, the interest of fans. It was just a matter of time before he added these cities to his national circuit and challenged his rivals head to head. Jim Crockett, whose mid-Atlantic territory was just down the coast from McMahon's northeastern lair, was well within striking distance. Crockett dealt with the threat of outside competition by proactively strengthening his promotion. In July 1983, he did away with canned studio TV tapings and moved his made-for-television matches into arenas, improving his company's image. But how'd that work out for you, Crockett? It didn't. You should have never done that. Big mistake. Had you hired me, well, that's another story for another time. Where were we? Fans, bear with me. The effort was costly. Upwards of $1 million for a new TV truck, but it was a necessary investment. Oh, brother, how did that work out, huh? It ruined everything. After Crockett's top star, Ric Flair, lost the NWA title to Harley Race during the summer of 1983, a perfectly executed booking plan played out over a series of months, building up to Crockett's biggest show ever, Starrcade, on November 24th, Thanksgiving night in Greensboro, North Carolina. People wanted to see the 34-year-old Nature Boy regain the championship, and his popularity throughout the region soared. He feuded with Harley Race, Bob Orton Jr., and Dick Slater, and called upon Roddy Piper and Wahoo McDaniel to help even things up. By Thanksgiving, fans were eager to see their hero achieve retribution on Race in the confines of a steel cage. Starrcade 83, what an event, perhaps one of the biggest and best in pro wrestling history. Do your research, do your due diligence, go out and check this out, you won't regret it. Starrcade 83 lived up to the hype, both in the ring and at the box office. The Greensboro Coliseum was packed to the rafters with over 15,000 fans, and tens of thousands, estimated between 30 to 80,000, watched the show on closed-circuit television. Now, this is before the original WrestleMania in 1985. Crockett did it first. The NWA did it first. The event was wrestling's first $1 million gate and a huge boost to Crockett and the anti-WWF movement. In the ring, Flair emerged victorious as anticipated, winning the NWA belt in a bloody bout. Roddy Piper beat his longtime foe, Greg Valentine, in another violent, epic bout. This one under dog collar chain rules. The popular Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood also triumphed, winning the World Tag Team Championship for the 5th time with a technical win over Jack and Jerry Briscoe, the Briscoe brothers. While there was room for trivial complaints, Crockett's great storytelling made history, and Starrcade would become an annual event continued for the next 17 straight years. Starrcade was an incredible event, yearly event. Talk about great pay-per-views, telecasts, 17 years of Starrcade. But a month later, on December 25th, 1983, Steamboat, one of Crockett's top fan favorites, retired from wrestling and vacated his claim to the World Tag Team titles. Piper, another hero in the Mid-Atlantic region, was scooped up by Vince McMahon Jr., and that would be the latter's second major talent raid. Crockett spent time turning Valentine babyface to make up for the losses, and then McMahon grabbed him too. With Flair on the National Wrestling Alliance circuit defending the world title and criticism that much of the upper roster of JCP was too old, Crockett needed to bring in talent. Promoters in Georgia, Mid-South, and San Antonio helped him out with the deficiencies. And the Road Warriors, the JYD Junkyard Dog, Stan Hansen, and Tully Blanchard made their local debuts. Talk about Hall of Famers and legends. What a time it was. This truly was probably, if not the golden era, the second golden era of the world of pro wrestling here in the 80s, especially around this time. The Georgia territory struggled in 1983 as the company's focus was on Western expansion, but Booker Ole Anderson had returned to the basics and put all his energy into his core cities. While still not giving up on progress in Ohio, unafraid to make a move against McMahon, Anderson sought to advance into Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, in addition to Pennsylvania. Wow. On his TV programming, he featured brief clips of current WWF wrestlers from old Georgia footage, showing the grapplers being pummeled by prelim-level opponents. Through the full match had always ended with the bigger name winning. Anderson would cut the finish and tell the viewing audience that the preliminary wrestler had won. You fucking liar, Ole. Rest in peace. Smart wrestling fans were not amused by the crude promotional tactic. It backfired. Let's be honest. Nor were they pleased with the promotion show at the Omni Coliseum in Atlanta on November 6, 1983. I hope you're writing this all down, fans. The dates, the places, the names. Don't hate the player, hate the game. The game never changes, but the players do. Then NWA World Champion Harley Race was slated to appear and defend his crown against Tommy Rich. An estimated 4,000 people turned out, only to be told Race was a no-show. And Ted DiBiase was appearing instead. No refunds were offered. Some questioned whether Race had been booked for Atlanta at all. The champ was coming off a tour of Japan and was likely getting some much-needed R&R. Georgia officials could have managed the entire affair differently, but didn't. And the last-minute switcheroo was a big disappointment. Harley Race against Tommy Rich, or Ted DiBiase against Tommy Rich. Now, DiBiase's a legend, one of the most underrated grapplers perhaps in history. But he's no Harley Race, who was arguably could be on anybody's Mount Rushmore. Not mine, but he could be on yours. Race was unbelievable. I used to have weekly and monthly conversations with Harley when he was running his organization, WLW, out in Missouri. I'll never forget it, Harley. I appreciate your time. Rest in peace, big brother. Further no-shows in Ohio, including a situation in Columbus where Abdul the Butcher and Mr. Wrestling 2 didn't appear. And that was also harmful to the promotion's credibility. 2 weeks before Race's non-appearance, Anderson had scored a huge hit with The Last Battle of Atlanta, the end of a long-running feud between Tommy Rich and Buzz Sawyer. More than 10,000 fans turned out for the event. On Thanksgiving, for the 6th annual Holiday Tag Team Tournament, another 13,000 enthusiasts were on hand. But on December 4th to be exact, Omni crowds dipped to under 2,000 at the fucking Omni. Wow. Ponder that. And they were not much better on Christmas at only drawing 2,500 at the Omni. The overexposure of Rich, plus the high position roles of Ronnie Garvin and Killer Brooks, were unpopular, and even Anderson was getting too much airtime. The promotion needed new talent and storylines, and Anderson responded. He pushed Ted DiBiase to the national title and Jake Roberts to the TV championship, and he saw gold in the Road Warriors. Oh, what a gold rush. Both Roberts and the Warriors had been part of Paul Ellering's Legion of Doom stable, and on camera, they were a major thorn in Anderson's side. The massive 6'4", 350-pound King Kong Bundy, along with Stan Hansen and Brad Armstrong, were top fan favorites, in addition to Tommy Rich. Rich had lost a loser leaves town bout to DiBiase on Christmas, but he was still active in the territory under a mask, appearing as Mr. R. The real identity of the shrouded hero wasn't much of a secret. Hello, McFly, I'll say it again. On February 18, 1984, the hooded grappler received a shot at DiBiase's national belt. But during the fracas, much to the shock of the title holder, Rich made an appearance outside the ring. Now, how could two people be in the same place at the same time? It's like that whole De Niro-Hoffman thing. Hoffman, De Niro, De Niro, Hoffman? No. Am I right? No. Was it De Niro and Hoffman? No. It was Hoffman and Pacino. Pacino and Hoffman. Not De Niro, that fucking crazy bastard that he is now, libtard. Pacino and Hoffman. Wasn't that the rumor? Somebody leave a comment here in the premiere chat. Somebody say something, for crying out loud. Correct me, please. I'm not above being corrected. Like I said, I'm not always right. I'm just very rarely wrong. Now focus, Chaos. Focus. Wow. His opponent was really Brad Armstrong, and as the champion reeled from astonishment, he suffered a pinfall and lost the title. Notably, 2 days before this match, Anderson had run his first show in Baltimore at the Civic Center with a solid lineup. Larry Zbyszko was booked against his mentor's son, Bruno Sammartino Jr., in an effort to draw WWF fans. But gaining superiority in Baltimore, which had been a part of McMahon's circuit for 2 decades, was a huge challenge. To make a point in response, McMahon scheduled nearly every big gun talent he had for Baltimore Civic Center on March 3rd, 1984, and drew a complete sellout. Aside from Andre the Giant, Superfly Jimmy Snuka, The Rock, Don Morocco, and Rowdy Roddy Piper, his world champion Hulk Hogan, intercontinental title holder Tito Santana, and world tag team champions the Soul Patrol of Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson were all on the bill. It was an extraordinary display of firepower. Anderson refused to give in, and on April 7th, he returned to the city with NWA champ Ric Flair, defending against former Kingpin Jack Briscoe. Whereas Baltimore was a battleground city with the box office advantage going to McMahon, the reverse occurred in Altoona, Pennsylvania. There, GCW, Georgia Championship Wrestling, made a deal with disgruntled former WWF affiliate promoter Gene Dargan, and quickly won over the hearts of the local fans. In the interest of keeping things fresh, Anderson routinely shared wrestlers with Mid-South office by the polarizing Bill Watts, headquartered in suburban Tulsa. Watts opened in 5 southern states: Oklahoma, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, and parts of Texas. His promotion drew consistently well in New Orleans and Houston. And although not a member of the National Wrestling Alliance, Mid-South was considered a friendly peer of the NWA. Watts didn't need membership in a national organization to be successful, having proven to be one of the brightest minds in the industry, and that's a fact. He churned out arguably the best TV wrestling shows found anywhere on a weekly basis. Go out and research Mid-South, the UWF, a hard-hitting, snug, stiff territory, more so than world-class championship wrestling ever was. And Bill Watts took no guff. And if you got your ass handed to you and your ass kicked outside in a bar or a restaurant or a tavern or in the streets or in a brawl as a grappler that worked for Watts and you didn't win, you were gone. Persona non grata. You had to live the fucking life when you worked for Watts in that territory. That's how it was. That's how different it is than today's business. It was a no-frills production, sans pointless interview segments and wasted time. The show was built around steady action, and Watts, known for his commanding personality, micromanaged the telecast to ensure everything ran according to his vision. And the result was unanimous. Viewers in New Orleans delivered better than a 40 share in TV ratings. Wow. Wow. A 40 share. And Mid-South wrestling was respected by the wrestling smart community and average fans alike, and often difficult balance to strike. That's for damn sure. Look at the ratings in today's business, especially AEW. And I'm not just calling you out because I'm a fan. I watch every week. You guys know I report on WWE, AEW, New Japan, everything from pillar to post, coast to coast, and border to border, including my home at Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling. On all social media platforms, Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling. Watts was a traditionalist, and he preached to his locker room the importance of credibility in wrestling. His roster had to strictly adhere to kayfabe protection. Kayfabe. And anything that diminished the integrity of his promotion was dealt with through fines and dismissals. For instance, warnings went out that fan favorites could never be seen in public with villains. That's the way it's supposed to fucking be. Take it from me, the GOC. Not in bars, restaurants, or in the same rental car. A lot of wrestlers were friends behind the scenes, but the Watts forbade any public interaction to maintain the illusion of kayfabe and of the in-ring feuds, like it was meant to be. Watts was an intelligent promoter and knew his audience. He teased their emotions with creative storylines and mixed wrestling fundamentals with wild brawling. Like the WWS formulaic methodology, say that 3 times fast, when it came to talent, Watts had a blueprint all his own. He filled his cards with edgy heels, personable baby faces, and general tough guys, as I just spoke about. The wrestlers he pushed earned his respect and trust. But at the same time, he was keenly aware of the marketing potential of key performers. Junkyard Dog, an African-American, a black guy, grappler with off-the-charts charisma, was singled out because of his immense potential and began his star-making climb in 1979. The JYD became an unparalleled hero throughout the South, and his supporters were as die-hard as they came. Watts played his cards right, avoiding overexposure, and the JYD was still going strong in 1983 and 84. What a legend. JYD wasn't much of a grappler, but he was the people's hero. He was the everyman. He was the Black Dusty Rhodes. Just that simple. And if you don't like my analytics and the way I describe things here, change the fucking channel. But even his superstar status couldn't bump attendance for a show at the Superdome in New Orleans on November 19th, 1983. And only 8,000 people turned out. The smallest ever wrestling crowd for that venue. You hear that? 8,000, the smallest record for that venue. When's the last time AEW, just picking out on them right now, drew over 8,000? Only at All In London? Let that marinate. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, as I always say. How about that? And that was considered a light crowd for back then. 8,000. You couldn't approach that today if your life depended on it, for a lesser term that I could have used, and I want to keep it PG here. Wow. Dusty Rhodes, David and Kerry Von Erich, and Mr. Wrestling 2 were also on the card. In addition, up-and-comers the Road Warriors, Magnum TA, and Mr. Wrestling 2. Now, Wrestling 2 and TA were involved in one of the early 1984's hottest feuds, and the slowly developing angle was an example of the consideration Watts put into his booking strategy. Pretty damn good consideration. The two wrestlers were leading fan favorites in Mid-South, and the veteran masked grappler had taken his 24-year-old partner under his wing. On December 25th, 1983, the pair topped the Natural Butch Reed and Jim the Anvil Neidhart for the Regional Tag Team Championship. In the weeks that followed, Mr. Wrestling 2 became jealous of his protege, especially after Magnum was named the #1 contender to the North American title held by the Junkyard Dog. Magnum gave his mentor his title shot. But Mr. Wrestling 2 cheated his way to a victory, commenting and cementing his heel turn. Ultimately, Magnum ended up battling and defeating the man he admired for a long and an emotional battle on May 12, 1984, if I got this correctly. The angle played out in gripping fashion and captured the attention of fans throughout the region. Watts was fully aware of Vince McMahon Jr.'s manipulations, and in early 1984, the WWF achieved local TV deals in two of his top towns, New Orleans and Little Rock. But as far as Louisiana was concerned, Watts was politically protected and unworried about any future invasions. That was because the Louisiana Athletic Commission only issued a single wrestling booking license for the entire state, and Watts had it. Mid-South was the only game in town for live events within Louisiana, and Tulsa and Oklahoma City as well. The Watts continued his business dealings with Dallas promoter Jack Atkinson, Fritz Von Erich, and booked the Von Erich boys whenever he got the chance. David, Kevin, and Kerry Von Erich were enormously popular and almost guaranteed sellouts. But Watts knew there was a dark side to the Von Erichs. In June 1983, the public became aware of it too. On June 25th, Kerry Von Erich returned to Dallas from his honeymoon in Mexico and was found to be carrying more than 300 pills and 10 grams of marijuana. He was locked up and charged, and details of his incarceration were revealed by the Dallas media. Kerry's arrest was representative of a wider drug abuse problem by the Von Erich brothers, and insiders who'd been around the trio knew it to be true. The crippling effects of substance abuse had the brothers headed down a gloomy path. But in the terms of success of world-class wrestling, their problems couldn't have come at a worse time. The promotion was in the midst of a financial boom unlike anything it had experienced before, and the Von Erichs were ring royalty. Their faces were plastered on the covers of national wrestling magazines, and the syndicated Dallas TV program increased their fame in cities far from Texas. Atkinson had struck gold with the protracted Von Erich Freebirds War, and David, Kevin, and Kerry battled Michael Hayes, Terry Gordy, and Buddy Roberts across the territory with exceptional returns. Bad Street, Atlanta, GA. Bad Street in the whole USA. Bad Street, nasty and hot. The further down the street, the worse it got. Or is it? The further down the block, the worse it got. Bad Street, Atlanta, GA. Bad Street in the whole USA. No? Too much? Too soon? Too little? Von Erich's Freebirds? What? What'd I say? It's just my rendition of Bad Street USA. You knew I had to do it. The Fabulous Freebirds, man. The Von Erich's World Class. All right, I'm back. 3 major Star Wars shows were staged at the Reunion Arena in downtown Dallas in 1983. Unbelievable territory for the day. And each drew more than 19,000 spectators. On June 17th, 21,000 paid $300,000 at the gate to see Kevin Von Erich challenge the NWA World Heavyweight Champion Harley Race in a highly charged bout. Now do your calculations, your money from back then to now, the calculation, money transfer, changeover. I don't know, man. I'm just going by what Cornette and the last had said. I don't know how to do it. You figure it out. June 17th, 1983. 21,000 fans paid over $300,000. I do the math. I failed non-credit math in college twice. I had to take math 3 times before I finally passed it. I'm just saying, I'm giving you the facts. I'm giving you true stories here. That's why you're here. All right, where were we? The match ended when David Von Erich entered the ring to stop Race's onslaught on his brother, who had suffered an arm injury, and established David as the next logical contender to the NWA belt. Both David and Kerry became champions before leaving the building that night in Dallas. David going over on Jimmy Garvin for the Texas title, and Kerry winning the American tag straps from Hayes and Gordy with Bruiser Brody as his partner. On November 24th, World Class returned to the Reunion Arena. And this time, Kerry beat Hayes in a loser leaves town match before 19,000 fans. Garvin was also involved in a hot feud with English wrestling sensation Chris Adams, who turned out to be a real asshole. Rest in peace, Chris. I'm just giving you the facts. And the two traded the American Heavyweight Championship several times. There was another big happening that night. 19-year-old Mike Von Erich, the 4th son of Fritz, made his wrestling debut and defeated Skandor Akbar. Tall and skinny, Mike was immediately embraced by the home crowd, and he worked through his greenness to display vast potential. The following month, on Christmas night, World Class staged its final Reunion Arena program of the year, with 19,675 people eager to see David Von Erich dethrone Ric Flair for the NWA belt. The audience didn't get the finish they wanted, but David did end up with a DQ victory, solidifying his place as a top world title changer. As in Mid-South, sportsmanship and credibility were principal elements of the Dallas promotion. Again, 2 of the toughest promotions in the day, UWF Mid-South and World Class Championship Wrestling in Texas. Atkinson was extremely proactive of wrestling's insider secrets and went out of his way to shield his sons from anything that would cast a negative shadow on their careers or his business, including allegations of drug abuse. Rumors circulated that Atkinson was working behind the scenes to influence the NWA hierarchy to give David a run with the world title. As mentioned earlier, David was actually a member of the NWA Board of Directors, and he was in maybe the most unique position of any active professional wrestler for that reason. For Atkinson, getting one of his sons the championship was a primary goal, and there was no speculation that David was going to beat Harley Race for the championship sometime before the end of 1983. However, those plans changed when Flair regained the NWA belt at Starrcade in November. If David was getting the championship, and it was still a big if, small word, big meaning, if, the title change was probably going to occur sometime in early 1984. Part of Atkinson's close network of allies was the head of All Japan Pro Wrestling, Shohei Giant Baba, a 3-time NWA World Champion himself. Baba and 2 of his proteges, Jumbo Saruda and Genericho Tenryu, had captured the attention of Dallas fans during the June 17, 1983 Reunion Arena show. As part of the talent exchange between the promotions, wrestlers also went to the Far East. On February 10, 1984, David Von Erich arrived in Tokyo to begin a 3-week tour for Baba. But before the first show took place, David Von Erich was found dead in his hotel room. The 25-year-old's death stunned the international wrestling community. It was determined that Von Erich had suffered from acute enteritis, an inflamed intestinal issue, which may have triggered a heart attack. There was gossip that his death was caused by substance abuse, and Kevin didn't waste any time telling a reporter that his brother was in no way, shape, or form involved in drugs. The Von Erich's tragic death reverberated to all corners of the wrestling world, and fans in Dallas took it especially hard. More than 3,000 people attended his funeral, and Ric Flair, Dorian Terry Funk, and Vern Gagne were among those on hand to pay their respects. Rest in peace, David. The wrestling business lost another influential figure the first half of 1984. Vincent James McMahon, the founder of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, and the man who had unified the Northeastern Territories into one thriving operation, passed away on May 17, 1984. At 69 years old, McMahon Sr. succumbed to cancer after a long fight and was laid to rest at Our Lady Queen of Heaven Cemetery in North Lauderdale, Florida. Across the wrestling landscape, admiration for McMahon poured in from his peers, pundits, and the public alike, and his accomplishments spoke for themselves. No other promoter in history had ruled the metropolitan of the Northeast single-handedly like he had. And when his son purchased the WWF in 1982, he acquired wrestling's greatest enterprise. Over his last year, it was believed that McMahon Sr. fielded many calls from contemporaries who wanted to know what his son was up to. Individuals like Vern Gagne, a long-time associate with a track record of good business dealings with the elder McMahon, paid a heavy price in McMahon Jr.'s late '83 talent raid. Bob Geigel was hammered in St. Louis when the WWF arrived. And McMahon Jr. not only seized a prime TV spot, but resumed wrestling at the Chase Hotel. And throughout the early part of 1984, as the WWF targeted local TV acquisitions, a new group of promoters were coping with the harsh new realities. Although McMahon Sr. had remained an advisor to his son, his days calling the shots were over. He'd earned universal respect over the course of his lengthy Hall of Fame career, and now with his death, it was up to his son to sink or swim in the new wrestling environment that he himself was creating. Either McMahon Jr. in the new wrestling environment would reshape the industry, or he was going to fail miserably, and the business was going to snap back to his original configuration, meaning the territories, without much fallout. The latter was unlikely, but the jury was still out. Soak it in, fans, as we go into the next episode of Storytime an industry at war. I'll say that to say this, because I tell it like it is. Don't you dare miss it.